Okay, I just want to quickly go over a halacha that you might know about. It's actually a mitzvah that you might know about, mitzvah that you might not know about. We start counting the Omer on the second night of Pesach when the korban Omer was brought. It was a korban made of wheat that they would harvest that very night. And that korban allowed us to eat something called Chodosh. Chodosh means new. And until this night, until they gave this korban, so the new wheat that had grown, usually from Sukkot time, sometimes as early as the previous August, is forbidden to eat. Listen to this, forbidden to eat the new wheat. You would sustain yourself on old flour that was made the previous summer, okay, that was called Yashan. On the second night of Pesach, once this korban Omer was brought, everything, all flour at that point, all wheat was called Yashan. It was called old, and it was mutar. It was permitted to eat. Okay, and so nowadays we don't give the korban, but those that are careful to only eat Yashan, which is usually most people in Israel, whether they know about it or not, the flour in Israel is Yashan. So are only allowed to start eating the new wheat on the second night of Pesach. Okay. Now, there's only one Rishon that says that we don't have to keep this mitzvah today. Most people have never even heard of this mitzvah, but we rely on this one Rishon named the Baal Truma, and he says that outside of Israel, we don't have to be careful about this mitzvah. You're allowed to eat Chodosh outside of Eretz Yisrael. Okay, now, there's another leniency that most people outside of Israel rely on, and that is what's called a Sveika. That's where you have two doubts. What are our two doubts here? The first one is we don't know if we're really obligated to keep this outside of Israel. And the second one is we don't know if the flour that we buy on a shelf is really Chodosh or not. We don't know. We have no idea. It doesn't say on it Chodosh. The OU doesn't say this is Chodosh or Yashan. We're not sure. So that's the difference. Now, there are people outside of Israel who are careful about this halacha. The reason why people in Israel are careful about it is because you can't really get Chodosh unless it's brought from outside of Israel to Israel. And then it usually says on it that whether this is Chodosh or Yashan. Outside of Israel, though, especially in America, there are people who are very careful about it, and you can get Yashan-only products. Okay, but again, most people take the lenient approach and are not careful about this in Israel. Outside of Israel.